Right, next one. So Develop DVP put out an announcement. They were in the paper and everything. So they've formed a contracting joint venture with Tjiwarl Contracting Services. So aimed at securing contracts of up to $50 million. So now I'll put it up on YouTube here, a little picture. Tjiwarl is the determination area, the native title area in and around Leinster. So Leinster's sort of right on the bottom, or just on the map there, you'll see you've got IGO, so Decius, you've got Bellevue Gold, so they're right next door to each other. So north of that, you've got Liontown, Kathleen Valley. So the native landholders are the Tjiwarl people for that area. So,
gotcha. You've got some other mines in amongst that area.
Yeah, so
too.
you've got Agnew just to the left,
Mount
then
Keith.
Mount Keith above that, further up that highway, heading up toward Wooloona. So and there's cliffs in there as well. There's,
So this group would have done a bunch of these sort of
so
been pretty familiar with the involvement of mining companies.
Well, they are I know Tony Ottaviano spoke at, I think it was Diggers, talking about when I think it was their the first piece of material or hole that was dug at Kathleen Valley was like the Tjiwarl people were there to dig that hole, and be part of that whole process. So the I know Liontown have done a lot with that. The native title holders there. So, and I'm going to talk about why this is so important for the mining industry, that these relationships are in place and there's good relationships between the mining companies and the native title holders. So, look, what's Develop up to here? So they're to break it down, they're going to help fund this contracting service. It's like a JV with the aim to, I guess, set them up, get them going, get them capable to then take on full ownership of this. And so what they're going to be doing, the first up, one of the contracts will be the run of mine pad management of Bellevue Gold. So they'll be, operating the ROM loader to feed the crusher and things like that. And they also talk about doing the light vehicle maintenance contract, and then supplying people, PPE and everything. So, as I said, estimated at $50 million over 3 years. So
how does that the $50 million? Can you talk me through how that funding kind of works out?
I assume they would just figure out. So Bellevue Gold would pay the JV, which is I think they will pay Tjiwarl Contracting Services. They'll agree to say, right, based on this amount of equipment, this amount of labour and everything, this is what we pay you to run this portion of the business.
Contracting arrangement,
Yeah. So I guess it's all like without the actual contract being in place, it's an estimated value of what it's going to be worth. So same as when a company says what the contract's going to be worth for a mining contract. So before it's actually finalised, they say this is the estimated value of what that contract's going to be worth. The revenue, that's the revenue they're going to bring in.
Yep.
So now this setup is appears to be very similar to what Tees did with Willamara in 2015. So Tees is a big open pit contractor. So Willamara, they're up in the Pilbara area where the Solomon hub is for Fortescue. So in 2015, Tees and Willamara signed a JV to support the non-process infrastructure at the Solomon hub for Fortescue Metals, and now they went through that process. Willamara have now taken full control of that, part of that JV, which is what Develop said that Tjiwarl will do once they're fully capable. And look, Fortescue then, I'll go through what they provided, but they've just awarded $179 million worth of contracts to Willamara. So that's where they've got to. So it's other examples of where the traditional landowners and Indigenous communities get involved in these mining operations. You've got like Burncut, they're partnered with BOAB, so they implement Indigenous employment programs, give Indigenous people an opportunity to work at mine sites, and so that's that side of things. SMS Mining Services, so they're a founding partner of the, I apologise how I go with the pronunciations of these, everyone. So Mulpramara, I think, connection. So they started that. It's a non-for-profit organisation that provides Aboriginal youth in remote communities with education and employment opportunities. So then you've got as I said, I mentioned Tees in 2015. They went into a JV with Willamara. And as I said, Fortescue awarded $179 million in contracts to Willamara and Eastern Gurrama in 2019. So that for road maintenance, resource definition services, non-process infrastructure at the Solomon Hub. I think I saw in their Fortescue's website they've offered about, I think it was over $2 billion worth of contracts to Indigenous companies since 2011. So Fortescue seem to be really at the forefront of this side of things. Then you've got Emeco, so they own Force and Pit and Portals. They partnered with Tjiwarl, and that was a Indigenous equipment hire company based in WA. So they supply for Wiluna, Leonora, educational opportunities, employment opportunities. So I guess they're some of the players in this field. So I guess I wanted to talk about today why this is important and why companies have to be on the front foot of getting these Indigenous people in the workforce and maintaining good relationships. So from a contract perspective, so look at what Develop are doing right now. When you go to tender for a mining contract, let's say the Liontown contract that's out for tender at the moment. So you could be the best miner, have the best execution, the best people, the lowest cost. But when you go into that tender meeting, one of the big questions is with everyone,
what's your capability with
what is your
locals?
ESG capability, and specifically, what are you doing to help promote Indigenous people in the workforce, and what are you doing to help Indigenous communities around you? Well, it's probably not that specific question, but that's the line. What is your capability for ESG? So going into a contract meeting and saying, look, we've just done a JV with the Tjiwarl Contracting Services. We're getting that is our plan to get more Indigenous people in our workforce and help the Indigenous communities. That if you don't have that, you're not seen as a favourable mining company, because you're not on the front foot with ESG, and like maintaining those positive relationships with the native title holders, massive.
So you think that this arrangement with Develop and the local landowners from an employment sense in a joint venture actually builds their capability with that very same landowner group, which would be relevant to a tender process for Kathleen Valley at the moment? Yeah,
companies you could easily not get given a mining contract because you don't have any, they don't see you to have enough credentials in ESG or with Indigenous workforce and things like that. It's a massive part of what makes mining contractors and companies appealing to engage with. So being on the front foot, it's an absolute necessity with this sort of stuff, because you think of what WA mining is. If the mining companies have poor relationships with the native title holders, and the whole industry is just like permitting is just drawn out, permits won't even be issued. You won't be able to get the native title agreements. If those relationships are poor, mining just does not happen. So this sort of stuff here is what is why it is so important to maintain these good relationships. And
Juukan Gorge is in everyone's recent memory, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think that's kind of case in point and kind of how things can all go horribly wrong.
And with mining companies like generating all this revenue, like giving, I guess, Indigenous people the opportunity to work in it, and giving, I guess, the native title holders the revenue share and equity portion of being involved in businesses, just, I guess, as they talk about, helps close the gap, which is so that's, I guess they're the examples of who's doing it well in the industry. As I said, Developer on the front foot with sorting this partnership. It sounds, as I said, Fortescue sound like they're really, really on the leading the pack with what they're doing with Indigenous workforces. So
and that closing the gap point, mate. Like, you think about what actually. You could have arrangements that are purely financial, but unless you're kind of building capability and internal capability through employment opportunities, then what's the real potential of kind of improving educational outcomes and employment outcomes over time, it's pretty tough, right? So you need the employment piece to come together, and that's where stuff like this matters a lot.
Exactly. Now, look, I know, and I know a lot of nearly every mining company is big in this field. So apologies if you're doing a lot out there, and I didn't mention you, but they're the first ones I come across today. So, but there's plenty. Every company's very heavily involved in this side of things. So,
what's your read through on this one in terms? Like, I read this and I think, does that give Bill a front row seat to the Liontown contract now? Is there some read through on kind of having a bit of an edge now?
I don't think it'd be seen as an edge. I think it'd be more if you don't have it, you remove yourself. Like if you're not on the front foot with helping the Indigenous involvement, doesn't give you a front row seat, but you can be literally scratched off if you're not doing the right thing in the ESG department. Like, it's as simple as that. So, look, this partnership, it's said in the announcement that they would provide contracting services in the Tjiwarl region. We know Liontown's just north of Bellevue, so it will be in that region. So, look, when they're presenting their tender, they say, look, we've got this JV with Tjiwarl Contracting Services. We can provide we can do the ROMPAD management at Kathleen Valley. It's
and we've got the relationships
with the native landowners, and that's a big tick, and that's exactly why, and makes them look more favourable than someone that doesn't have that relationship.
Yeah.
So it is a big factor.